I got nothing in the will. A stranger's kindness made me richer than my whole family. Mahogany conference table stretched endlessly before Emma Martinez, its polished surface reflecting the stern faces of her relatives who had gathered for the reading of her grandfather's will. The law office of Patterson and Associates occupied the 15th floor of a downtown Chicago skyscraper, and through the floor-to-ceiling windows, she could see the bustling city below, people hurrying to their destinations, unaware that her entire world was about to crumble. Emma had always been different from the rest of the Martinez family. While her cousins pursued careers in finance and law, following in the footsteps of their successful parents, Emma had chosen to become a social worker. She spent her days in the underfunded community centers of Chicago's South Side, helping families navigate the complex web of social services, often using her own meager salary to buy supplies for the programs she ran. Her grandfather, Roberto Martinez, had built a construction empire from nothing. After immigrating from Mexico in the 1960s, he had always been fond of Emma, often telling her stories about his early days in America, working 3 jobs to support his family while learning English at night. She remembered sitting on his lap as a child, listening to his accented voice describe the importance of helping others who were less fortunate. The attorney, Mr. Patterson, cleared his throat and began reading the will with practiced precision. Emma's heart raced as he announced each bequest. Her uncle Carlos, who had taken over the family business, received the construction company and the family's primary residence in Lincoln Park, a sprawling mansion worth millions. Her Aunt Maria inherited the vacation home in Aspen, along with a substantial stock portfolio. Her cousins received luxury cars, expensive jewelry, and trust funds that would ensure their financial security for generations. With each announcement, Emma felt herself shrinking further into the leather chair. The room seemed to grow smaller, the walls closing in as the reality of her situation became clear. When Mr. Patterson finally reached her name, the silence in the room was deafening. Emma Martinez was to receive nothing, not a single dollar, not a piece of jewelry, not even a sentimental keepsake to remember the man who had raised her after her parents died in a car accident when she was 12. Her relatives avoided eye contact, some shuffling papers or checking their phones with studied indifference. Uncle Carlos, a man who had never worked a day in the community center, but often criticized Emma's career choice at family gatherings, finally spoke up with barely concealed satisfaction in his voice. The family's reasoning was simple and cruel. Emma had chosen to waste her potential on helping strangers instead of contributing to the family business. She had refused countless offers to join the company, stubbornly pursuing her calling to serve the community. In their eyes, she had abandoned the family legacy, and now she would face the consequences. As the meeting concluded, Emma sat frozen in her chair while her relatives filed out, already discussing their plans for their newfound wealth. Some talked about expanding the business, others about luxury vacations and home renovations. No one acknowledged her presence or offered a word of comfort. The weight of her grandfather's betrayal pressed down on her like a physical force. This was the man who had encouraged her passion for helping others, who had told her that true wealth came from the good you did in the world. Yet when it mattered most, he had chosen to reward those who measured success only in dollars and cents. Emma finally gathered the strength to leave the office, her legs unsteady as she made her way to the elevator. The ride down to the lobby felt eternal, each floor bringing her closer to a reality she wasn't prepared to face. She had been counting on at least a small inheritance to help her continue her work at the community center, which was facing budget cuts that threatened to close several programs. Outside the building, Chicago's autumn wind cut through her thin jacket, and she realized she didn't even have money for a taxi home. The irony wasn't lost on her. She had spent years helping others navigate financial hardship, and now she found herself in the same situation. As she walked through the crowded streets toward the bus stop, Emma felt invisible among the sea of well-dressed professionals hurrying past. Her modest clothing and worn shoes seemed to mark her as someone who didn't belong in this part of the city, someone who had been forgotten and cast aside. The bus ride to her small apartment in Pilsen took 45 minutes, giving her time to process what had happened. She stared out the window at the changing neighborhoods, watching as the gleaming skyscrapers gave way to modest homes and local businesses. This was her world, the world of people who struggled to make ends meet, who relied on community programs and the kindness of strangers to survive. Her apartment was a tiny one-bedroom unit above a Mexican bakery, where the scent of fresh bread and pastries provided a small comfort during difficult times. The rent was affordable, but Emma knew that without her grandfather's financial support, she would struggle to maintain even this modest lifestyle. That evening, Emma sat at her small kitchen table, surrounded by unpaid bills and her laptop, trying to make sense of her financial situation. Her social worker salary barely covered her basic expenses, and she had been supplementing her income with money from her grandfather to fund the community programs she had started. The harsh reality hit her like a wave. She would have to choose between paying her rent and continuing to fund the after-school program that served 30 children in her neighborhood. The program provided homework help, meals, and a safe place for kids to go after school while their parents worked multiple jobs to make ends meet. Emma thought about Maria, a 7-year-old girl who came to the program every day because her mother worked 2 jobs and couldn't afford childcare. She remembered Carlos, a teenager who had been heading toward gang involvement until he found mentorship and purpose through the program's job training initiatives. These children and families depended on her, and now she was failing them not because of her own choices, but because her family had decided she wasn't worthy of support. As she prepared for bed that night, Emma made a decision that would change everything. She would not let her grandfather's betrayal define her future. She would find a way to continue her work, even if it meant sacrificing her own comfort and security. Little did she know that her true test of character was just beginning, and that the most unexpected encounter of her life was waiting for her the very next day. Emma woke the next morning to the sound of rain against her window and the aroma of fresh bolillo bread from the bakery below. Despite the comfort of familiar scents, the weight of yesterday's events pressed down on her like a heavy blanket. She had slept fitfully, her dreams filled with images of disappointed children and closing community centers. After a simple breakfast of coffee and toast, Emma made her way to the community center, determined to maintain her normal routine despite the uncertainty that now clouded her future. The building was a converted warehouse in the heart of Pilsen, its brick walls covered with colorful murals painted by local artists, and the children who attended the programs. The morning was unusually quiet at the center. Emma spent her time organizing supply closets and updating program files, trying to create a sense of normalcy while her mind raced with potential solutions to her financial crisis. She had calculated that she could keep the after-school program running for maybe 2 more months with her savings, but after that, the 30 children who depended on it would have nowhere to go. Around noon, Emma decided to take a break and walk to the small park across the street. The rain had stopped, leaving the air fresh and clean, and she hoped that being outside would help clear her mind. The park was a modest green space with a few benches, playground equipment, and a small fountain that the neighborhood association had fought to have installed. As she sat on a bench, watching mothers push their children on swings and elderly men play chess at concrete tables, Emma noticed an older woman struggling with several heavy grocery bags. The woman appeared to be in her 70s, with silver hair and wearing a simple blue coat that had seen better days. She was trying to balance the bags while using a walking cane, and it was clear she was having difficulty. Without hesitation, Emma approached the woman and offered to help. The woman, who introduced herself as Mrs. Eleanor Chen, gratefully accepted the assistance. As they walked slowly toward her apartment building, Mrs. Chun explained that she had been doing grocery shopping for herself and her elderly neighbor, Mr. Rodriguez, who was recovering from hip surgery. The conversation flowed naturally as they walked. Mrs. Chun spoke with a slight accent, revealing that she had immigrated to Chicago from Taiwan in the 1970s with her late husband. She had worked as a seamstress for decades, saving every penny to help her children through college. Now in her retirement, she lived on a modest fixed income and spent her days volunteering at various community organizations. Emma found herself opening up about her work at the community center, describing the program she had developed and the families she served. She spoke passionately about the after-school program, the job training initiatives, and the food assistance services that helped struggling families put meals on the table. What Emma didn't mention was her current financial crisis. Despite her own uncertain future, she couldn't bring herself to burden this kind stranger with her problems. Instead, she focused on the positive impact the programs were having on the community. Mrs. Chun listened intently, asking thoughtful questions about Emma's work and expressing genuine admiration for her dedication. When they reached her apartment building, a modest 3-story structure with a small garden in front, Mrs. Chun invited Emma up for tea. The apartment was small but immaculately kept, filled with family photos, books, and handmade crafts. Mrs. Chun served jasmine tea in delicate porcelain cups while sharing stories about her life in America, the challenges she had faced as an immigrant, and the importance of community support in overcoming difficulties. As they talked, Emma learned that Mrs. Chun had lost her husband 5 years earlier and had no children of her own. Her husband had been a successful businessman who had invested wisely over the years, but Mrs. Chun had always lived simply, believing that material possessions were less important than human connections and community involvement. The afternoon stretched on as the two women discovered they shared similar values and perspectives on life. Mrs. Chun spoke about the importance of helping others, regardless of one's own circumstances, and Emma found herself feeling more hopeful than she had in days. When Emma finally prepared to leave, Mrs. Chun walked her to the door and surprised her with an unexpected request. She asked if Emma would be willing to visit again, explaining that she rarely had such meaningful conversations and would appreciate the company. Emma readily agreed, and they arranged to meet the following week. As she walked back to the community center, Emma felt a warmth in her chest that had nothing to do with the tea she had consumed. Sometimes, she reflected, the most important connections in life came from the most unexpected places. Over the following weeks, Emma began visiting Mrs. Chun regularly. Their friendship deepened as they shared stories, prepared meals together, and took walks through the neighborhood. Mrs. Chun began accompanying Emma to the community center, where she observed the programs in action and met the families who benefited from Emma's work. Mrs. Chun was particularly moved by the after-school program, watching as children who might otherwise be left unsupervised received homework help, nutritious snacks, and mentorship from caring adults. She saw how Emma's genuine compassion and dedication had created a safe haven for these families, many of whom were struggling with poverty, language barriers, and the challenges of adapting to life in America. One evening, about a month after their first meeting, Mrs. Chun invited Emma to dinner at her apartment. The table was set with her finest dishes, and she had prepared an elaborate meal of traditional Taiwanese dishes, alongside some of Emma's favorite Mexican foods that she had learned to cook. After dinner, Mrs. Chun asked Emma to sit with her in the living room. Her demeanor was more serious than usual, and Emma sensed that something important was about to be discussed. Mrs. Chun began by talking about her late husband's business success and the financial security they had built together. She explained that they had always lived below their means, investing their profits wisely and accumulating significant wealth over the decades. However, she revealed that she had been struggling with a difficult decision about how to use that wealth in a way that would honor her husband's memory and reflect their shared values. Emma listened quietly, unsure where the conversation was leading, but touched by Mrs. Chun's openness about her personal struggles. Mrs. Chun then revealed something that would change Emma's life forever. She had been so impressed by Emma's work and character that she had made a decision to establish a foundation dedicated to supporting community programs like the ones Emma had created. She wanted to endow it with $5 million, and she wanted Emma to serve as its director. Emma was speechless. The amount was more money than she had ever imagined, certainly more than she would have received from her grandfather's will. But more than the financial aspect, she was overwhelmed by the trust and confidence Mrs. Chun was placing in her. Mrs. Chun explained that she had spent weeks researching Emma's background, speaking with families who had been helped by her programs, and consulting with other community leaders. Everyone had confirmed what she had observed firsthand. Emma was someone who truly understood the meaning of service and could be trusted to use resources wisely and compassionately. The foundation would be called the Chen Family Foundation, and its mission would be to support grassroots community programs that served immigrant families and children in need. Emma would have complete autonomy in deciding how to distribute the funds, with the only requirement being that the money be used to help people build better lives for themselves and their families. Emma finally found her voice and tried to express her gratitude, but Mrs. Chun interrupted her with a gentle smile. She explained that Emma had already given her something invaluable: friendship, purpose, and the knowledge that her husband's legacy would continue through meaningful work. As Emma walked home that night, she reflected on the incredible turn her life had taken. Her own family had rejected her because she had chosen to help others, but a stranger had recognized the value of that choice and decided to support it beyond her wildest dreams. The next morning, Emma called a meeting with the community center's board of directors to share the news about the foundation. The room erupted in celebration as she explained how the funding would allow them to expand programs, hire additional staff, and serve even more families in need. As word spread through the community, families began stopping by to thank Emma and express their excitement about the expanded opportunities that would be available. Maria, the 7-year-old girl whose mother worked 2 jobs, drew Emma a picture of the two of them together, with the words, "Thank you for helping my family," written in careful lettering. Emma realized that her grandfather's will had actually been a blessing in disguise. If she had inherited his money, she might have become complacent, using the funds to maintain the status quo rather than seeking innovative solutions to community problems. Instead, she had been forced to rely on her own character and values, which had led her to a connection that was far more meaningful than any family inheritance. Mrs. Chun became a regular presence at the community center, working alongside Emma to develop new programs and mentor other young social workers. Their friendship had evolved into something resembling a family relationship, with Mrs. Chun filling the role of a supportive grandmother that Emma had lost. 6 months later, Emma stood in the same park where she had first met Mrs. Chun, now watching children play on new equipment that had been purchased with foundation funds. The after-school program had tripled in size. The job training initiatives had helped dozens of adults find stable employment, and the food assistance program was now serving hundreds of families each month. Emma thought about her relatives who had inherited money but had gained nothing of lasting value. They had wealth, but they had missed the opportunity to experience the kind of fulfillment that came from making a meaningful difference in other people's lives. She had learned that true wealth wasn't measured in bank accounts or property holdings, but in the connections we make with others and the positive impact we have on the world around us. Her grandfather's rejection had led her to discover something far more valuable than any inheritance: the knowledge that kindness and compassion, when shared freely, always find their way back to us multiplied. As the sun set over the Chicago skyline, Emma walked home with a lightness in her step that she had never experienced before. She had lost a family inheritance, but she had gained something infinitely more precious: a chosen family, a meaningful purpose, and the resources to help others find their own path to prosperity and happiness. The stranger's kindness had indeed made her richer than her whole family, but not in the way she had originally imagined. She had discovered that true wealth comes not from what we accumulate for ourselves, but from what we give to others and the love that flows back to us in return. The end.
Thank you for watching this story unfold with us here on M&A The Story Unfolds. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new tale. We'd love to know where you're watching from. Leave a comment below and tell us what part of the world you're joining us from. Your support means everything. See you in the next story.